Mike forgot to wear his crown.
It is now 7:00 p.m. and it's time for us to start our meeting. Today is August the 20th, 2019, and we'd like to welcome all of you. And today's been a big day, our first day of school, and it looks like everybody survived, but honestly, everybody looks a little tired. Are y'all tired? So we're glad you're all here tonight, and I hope everybody had a good first day. We've heard super positive things, so we're excited about starting a new year. At this time, I'd like to do I hear a motion to adjourn executive session and begin open session?
So moved.
Thank you, Dr. Powers. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Oswald. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries and it is unanimous. I would formally like to call our general session to order. I'd like to notify you that we are in compliance with the South Carolina Freedom of Information Act. And I also would like to notify you that the district does tape this meeting. The district is in compliance. We have notified the media of the date, time, and place of this meeting. In addition, we are taping this meeting for accuracy and preparing the minutes. I'd like to call on Dr. Powers for our invocation. Dr. Powers?
All right, if you'll bow your heads with me. Loving God, we come to you at this beginning of this new school year. We've been so many places this summer, and our journey has brought us back to this place and to this time together. We know that this is not by accident, but by your intimate design for each of us. As we turn towards you at the beginning of this year as a community, as we begin by saying thank you for this call to service to this Lexington community. Thank you for where we are on this journey and for the journey ahead. Thank you for where we are on this path in our lives. Be with us as we begin this year. Steady our hearts and our minds to be open to what is being constantly revealed through your loving presence. Give us a joy-filled heart, a warm and friendly attitude that is open to the movement of your Spirit and to others. Help us to be open and ready to respond to what is needed by our students, our parents, our alumni, and our community. In you we place our trust as we ask these things through your name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Dr. Powers. That was lovely. Ms. Hill, do we have any media present tonight? Okay, thank you. Board, you have an agenda in front of you. Do I hear a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Thank you, Dr. Powers. Do I have a second? Thank you, Ms. Green. Are there any questions or comments regarding the agenda? Hearing none, we'll take a vote. All in favor of the agenda as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries and it is unanimous. Board members, you have been provided copies of the minutes of the July 16th, 2019 regular board meeting and the August 6th, 2019 board meeting. Other than the corrections which have already been provided and submitted, are there any additions or corrections to the minutes of those two meetings? Hearing none, we'll accept the minutes as received. Board, we're now going down to 7.0, which is reports and action items. Do I hear a motion to approve 9 certified recommendations for the 2019-2020 school year?
Madam Chair, I move that the board accept the 9 certified recommendations by Dr. Little for the 2019-2020 school year.
Thank you, Dr. Powers. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Anderson. Board, let's get a little preview from Mr. Stacy on this before we vote on it. Can you want to give us an update on where we are, Mr. Stacy? Yeah, do your microphone. We can't hear you, please.
We were able to secure coverage in every one of our classes. We got everybody rescheduled where there might have been a vacancy. We have 8 positions that we are still looking for possibly for January hires, December graduates, but we've been able to reach to our pool and find some retired teachers to come in and teach a couple of blocks for teachers that have left the profession for personal reasons and decided they're going to, Melissa Rawl was telling me just a few minutes ago, she's got a chemistry teacher that came back to teach 2 chemistry classes this semester, and she says, I think by December we might have her in here for the rest of the year. So
great.
our staff has worked really, really hard. Our principals have just done a tremendous job getting quality candidates. And so I feel really, really good about it. We weren't in a situation, I was worried a week or so ago that we might have a class where I might be teaching, and that might be a problem. But we were able to make that not happen.
Look at Dr. Talley. That might be a problem.
I did go to Melissa Raw today because I had one last art situation and I had forgot to follow up on it. And I went to her at lunch today and I said, am I teaching art this afternoon? She said no, she had it covered. So we have an art teacher that's going to teach an extra block. So we feel really good about it. We had 114 teachers at our new teacher institute the week before school started. These are teachers that are new to the profession. And they come in, we just started this a couple of years ago, and they come in for training all week to get acclimated to what it means to be in Lexington School District 1. We had our new employee orientation breakfast on Friday before teachers came back on Monday. And we had invited 468 new employees. Now that includes support staff and teachers and administrators, et cetera. So we really have had 2 really good weeks of work with the teachers prior to the students reporting today. So I can't say enough about the people that are in my office and how hard they've worked to make this happen. So I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Board, let's give Mr. Stacy and his office a round of applause.
Well, and Chair, I would add, I want to thank all of our principals and district leadership, because again, it makes Mr. Stacy's job easy to hire in. So I know other districts are not where we're at, and it's because of y'all's leadership. So thank you all.
It was nice at that breakfast last week. The board is always invited to the new employee breakfast, and it was a sea of new people, and they just looked great, and they all seemed very happy. So that's a good sign, but thank you for including us in that. Now, board, let's go back to the motion. We have a motion from Dr. Powers to approve 9 certified recommendations for 2019-2020. Mr. Anderson seconded. So we'll now take a vote. Before we do that, though, are there any questions or comments? I didn't open it up to the board. I just asked Mr. Stacy. Does anybody else want to say anything? Okay. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries, and it is unanimous. The board was there was some discussion regarding a breach of contract by employees was discussed in executive session, but no action is required at this time as a result of that discussion. It was just for information only for the board. At this time, we're going to move to honors and achievements, which is 8.0. I'm going to ask Dr. Little to step down, and let me read this while he's walking. We celebrate successes of many kinds during the honors and achievements portion of our board meetings. We recognize the significant achievements of our students and employees, as well as the contributions and partnerships with our business partners and community organizations. Tonight's honorees include internationally recognized robotics, state champion wrestlers, state-level pageant queens, and I think we know who they are, teachers who won a grant to send books home with students this summer, and so much more. We feature all of tonight's honorees in our Proof Positive newsletter, which was on the sign-in table as you came in. If you did not pick one up when you signed in, please do so on your way out, and these make wonderful keepsakes, and take as many as you want. You're welcome to have these. Got some good pictures in them. In fact, let's see, I've already said that. Audience, you should know that if you try to follow along in the newsletter tonight, you may need to skip back and forth. The order of the program does not necessarily follow the brochure. In addition, we ask that you please stay until we finish recognizing all of tonight's award recipients. And I will say this, it's a short one, so you picked a good one to come to. It'll be over fast. As each award winner deserves our undivided attention. In order to accommodate our youngest honorees and their families, we will give you a chance to leave once, and then we will resume the meeting. So we will take a brief pause. Honorees, when you hear your names, go ahead and come on up and stand by Dr. Little. And Dr. Little, are you ready? Okay, we're going to start with the Lego League. Our first group returns to us after winning an award at, are you ready? The international level. The Meadow Glen Middle School robotics team, Gator Gears, represented South Carolina at the first Lego League Razorback Open Invitational in May. Competing against teams from around the world, the Gator Gears won first place for teamwork. Team members include Meadow Glen Middle's Sydney Davis, Sachi Lau, Celeste Sullivan, here they come in their shirts, and River Bluff High rising freshmen Heer Panchal, Serena Patel, Anushka Sharma, and Rebecca Yu. 72 teams competed in the event hosted by the Freshman Engineering Program at the University of Arkansas. Gator Gears scored 184 points in the robot game competition. Let's give these ladies a round of applause. Yeah, yeah. We now celebrate a second group of international winners. I did say international again. Member of Gilbert High's HOSA chapter competed at the HOSA International Leadership Conference in June. Winners include Madison Cook, Madison here, Harley Ann Hendricks, Harmony Hendricks, and Brian Circle. Going up against teams from the United States, Canada, Mexico, and China, Gilbert finished in fourth place in biomedical debate. How about that? Fourth place. The group rehearsed their talking points on the topic of pain management and opioids in preparation for the state, then international competitions. We salute our HOSA students for winning at this level. Congratulations. Now we're going to move to pageants and community service. Competing in the teen division of the Little Miss and Teen Miss South Carolina pageant, 4 Lexington School District 1 students won titles. Winners include Lexington High's Susanna Counts as the overall queen. Is she here? She comes. Taylor Spires as South Carolina's outstanding teen. And Madison Barrett as Teen Miss South Carolina. And Gilbert High's Emily Garris as Young Miss Teen South Carolina. These women demonstrated excellence in both community service and academics. In fact, they already volunteered with Lexington High Students in Action, the Special Olympics, and Prisma Health Children's Hospital, and will spend this year traveling South Carolina to raise funds for Prisma Health Children's Hospital, participating in community service events, and making speaking appearances. In fact, they just volunteered at the Lexington Police Department's National Night Out. Congratulations, ladies. Yes, get that down, Dr. Little. This summer, River Bluff High's Kellen Finnegan competed in the Miss South Carolina Scholarship Organization's Miss South Carolina Teen Pageant as Miss Columbia Teen. Not only did Kellen win the Miss South Carolina Teen title, she also placed in the top 10 at the Miss America's Outstanding Teen competition only a few weeks later and took home an award for highest GPA while there. A member of River Bluff's swimming and lacrosse teams, as well as the National Beta Club, she plans to use her title to support a cause close to her heart. Her platform, Families Fostering Hope, provides care for foster children by collecting toiletry items, blankets, clothes, shoes, and other items. Congratulations, Kellen. Well, we're going to totally switch gears, so get ready. We're now going to recognize 9 state champions, wrestlers, competed during the South Carolina USA Wrestling Freestyle and Greco-Roman State Championships held June 1st. Winners from the Soda City Wrestling Club include Gilbert High's Barrett Kraut, there's Barrett, White Knoll High's Jason Garay, Eric Lopez, Cam Rice, Jack Scott, Ty Sheely, and Zachary Weber. Pillion Elementary's Landon Fields and Pillion Middle's Ryan McElroy. Wrestlers could compete in freestyle, Greco, or both. Barrett, Eric, Landon, Ty, and Zachary won state. Y'all raise your hand. Let me call those names out again. Barrett, Eric, Landon, Ty, and Zachary. They all won state titles in both categories in their weight class. And Cam, where's Cam? Right there. Jack, Jason, and Ryan each won a state title in freestyle or Greco. Congratulations to these wrestlers. And Dr. Little, didn't you wrestle in high school?
Come on, somebody take Dr. Little on.
Yeah, let's see. Don't do that, you might get hurt. Thank you. Way to go, guys. Okay. Moving to staff recognitions, we begin with employees who received grant funding for various projects. Students from Rocky Creek Elementary took home new books for summer reading thanks to the Dollar General Literacy Foundation. If Alicia Clamp, Meredith Hatley, and Beth Stewart would join us up front, they received a summer reading grant worth $2,000 that they used to purchase books for rising second and third graders. Each student took home 10 to 12 books at the end of the year, plus a new backpack to carry home their mini library. These teachers carefully chose books for each student based on their interest and their reading level. Thank you for making summer reading fun and accessible. That was a great grant. Way to go. A grant from Lowe's encourages Red Bank Elementary students to get healthier by drinking more water. Physical education teacher Rocky Burns, Rocky here, received a $2,300 grant from the Lowe's Toolbox for Education program. He purchased 2 water bottle filling stations. They now reside in the gymnasium and cafeteria. Mr. Burns hopes to see students increase their fitness level and classroom achievement as they stay hydrated. Thank you, Mr. Burns. That was a clever grant, too. Now we're going to switch gears again. 2 of our music programs received multiple honors last year, which resulted in a state award this summer. Would choral directors Craig Quajo of Gilbert High and Cheryl Felder of White Knoll High come forward? The South Carolina Music Educators Association Choral Division awarded Gilbert and White Knoll High Schools each with an Outstanding Performance Award in recognition of their sensational singing. At the 2019 South Carolina Music Educators Association Choral Performance Assessment, Gilbert High's Chamber Choir, as well as White Knoll High's Varsity Choir, earned a Superior with Distinction rating. 6 Gilbert High students earned individual superior ratings at the state solo and ensemble festival. In addition, senior members of the White Knoll Choir received more than $500,000. Is that right? Did I say that right? $500,000. Wow. In college scholarships. A lot of zeros. Congratulations on your musical achievements. That's way to go. We wrap up tonight by recognizing 3 school board members. If Ms. Garris, Dr. Guyton, and Mr. Oswald would step down, please. I've got them right here. Shortly after joining the board, these board members began earning points in the South Carolina School Boards Association Boardmanship Institute. Board members accumulate points through activities like attending the South Carolina School Boards Association's annual convention and the district's new board orientation. They also earn points for legislative advocacy, as Ms. Garris did. Ms. Garris reached Level 2 status, while Dr. Guyton and Mr. Oswald achieved Level 1 status. We salute them for growing as leaders and continuing to learn more about what it means to serve their community as a school trustee. Let's give them a round of applause. Thank you for taking the time tonight to help us recognize the many honors and achievements of our students and staff and the many generous contributions of our local businesses and community. We love sharing our good news. Honorees, when you leave the meeting, remember to head to your left and into the main lobby, where a member of the communications office will help you find your certificate. Now, just as I promised, you are more than welcome to stay, but if you need to go on home, now's the time to take a quick step out. And thank you so much. Oh, you are so pretty. And congratulations on the GPA. Need to turn that light back up in front of us. And maybe if Okay. We are now down to item 9.0, which is citizens' participation. I have not received any cards. Is there anyone who would like to address the board tonight? Okay. Hearing none, we'll skip right over that because it is long. We will now go to 10.0, which are action items, and the board, we will be voting on these. 10.1 is the second reading for policy, hold on, let me put my glasses on. For policies IJL, media material selection and adoption from Dr. Talley. Board members, board members' policy IJL, media material selection and adoption has been presented for a second reading. Do I hear a motion to approve IGL, media material selection and adoption as presented?
Madam Chair, I move that the board approve for second reading policy IJL, media material selection and adoption.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Powers. Do I have a second? Second. Okay. Second, Ms. Green. Okay. Board, are there any questions or comments regarding policy IJL? Dr. Talley, would you like to just make a couple comments about it, just so we are clear?
Sure. As you recall from last month when I brought this for your review, this has not been revised as policy since 2005. We are obligated as a district to provide a variety of materials, and in this policy, it does give you the criteria that our librarians use when they do select materials. I'd also just like to say that I appreciate the board's support. We did have a budget amount this year to refurbish books in our libraries, our learning commons, and I just really do appreciate that support.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Talley. Okay, we now have a motion and a second on the floor. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries and it is unanimous. Board, you had in your packet, you had one student travel request. Do I hear a motion to approve one student travel request as presented? Thank you, Ms. Green. Do I have a second? Second. Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Are there any questions or comments regarding this travel request? Hearing none, we'll take a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries and it is unanimous. Item 10.3 is a resolution to provide for the issuance and sale of general obligation bonds. Do I hear a motion to adopt a resolution to provide for the issuance and sale of general obligation bonds?
Madam Chair, I make a motion that the board adopt a resolution to provide for the issuance and sale of not to exceed $11 million general obligation bonds of Lexington County School District Number 1, South Carolina. The bonds are to be issued in 2 or more series. The bond resolution will prescribe the purposes for which the proceeds shall be expended for the payment of bond funds and other matters relating thereto.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Guyton. Do I have a second?
A second.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Oswald. Okay, Mr. Salters, why don't we open it up with you walking us through this, and then we'll see if the board has additional questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. This bond resolution accomplishes a couple of things for us. First, we are using proceeds from this resolution to make our fall IPRB payments, installment revenue purchase bond payments. We had 2 installment revenue purchase bond series. One was 2013 and one was 2015. The 2013 series was actually what was used to build Carolina Springs Elementary and Carolina Springs Middle. And then the 2015 series was used for renovations at Red Bank Elementary School, Gilbert Primary School, and then also to build New Providence Elementary. And you may ask, well, those schools were built back in the mid-2000s and not in 13 and 15. Those were actually refunded at one point, so basically refinanced for lower rates. So that's why they're 13 and 15 dates. And so we have to make payments on those. This bond sale will make the payments in the fall and November. And then we have an associated bond sale, and that's why there are 2 series, to make payments in the spring of this year as well. This bond sale also will pay off the 2019 Series B bond anticipation note that was done in the spring. And that was to make payments on the spring of 2019, this previous spring's payment. And then there'll be some additional capital money available in this bond sale for various projects, and those are listed in Exhibit A of the resolution.
Great.
So I'll be happy to answer any questions. We do this each year around this time of year to make these payments for the upcoming year. And just for your information, this past year, we were looking at $13,973,000 of that not to exceed number, and in this bond sale, it's $11 million not to exceed.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Salters. Board, are there any questions or comments for Mr. Salters or for anyone else for that matter?
Yeah, I just have a couple.
Okay, Ms. Garris?
When I add up the amounts, I come up to 9.8 million, roughly 9.9 million. Where did the 11 million figure come from?
So you probably will come up to the requirements of $9,715,000 $554.39 if you add up the amounts in the bond, and there's a sizing buffer that's included in the bond, and so that sizing buffer is $1,284,445.61. And that's typical when you take the bonds to market. If the market bears a better rate, for example, that's why the numbers are not to exceed 11 million.
Any other questions, board?
Okay, I would just like to go on the record saying this list of improvements, that's pretty much what we voted on back in November, the voters, for renovations, additions, repairs to existing facilities, acquisition of land, that wasn't included, information technology and school safety equipment, and building and equipping new facilities of the school district. So, and that comes out to 3.8 million. So I don't necessarily have a problem with the 2013, 15, and 19B, but to levy more taxes for $3.8 million for improvements that we've already included, I can't, I mean, that's just something I can't do. I just thought I'd say that.
And just for information, it's actually about $2.5 million that's unallocated or uncommitted. And if the entire amount of the 11 million were used, which that's not the plan is the 8,693,000 roughly. It's actually $2.5 million in new money. And just for information, as you recall, when we did our facility study, the initial facility study, there were over $500 million worth of needs across the district. And we did a $365 million bond referendum for our voters in November. So there were a number of needs that were not recognized in that referendum, and this extra $2.5 million goes towards those ongoing maintenance needs that we have in our system. And the Exhibit A is written, list of improvements is written with the idea of flexibility in mind, to give us the flexibility to use these funds as the priorities of these needs appear.
Okay. On page 3, it says, letter D, Exhibit A, the improvements, the estimated cost is 3.8 million. So where did 2.5 million come from?
Page 3 of the resolution,
Yes.
under what section?
It's like 5 pages into it. There's the resolution, then the table of contents, and then Article 1. So it's under Article 1.
Under Article 1, you said letter D?
Yes, page 3, letter D.
Okay. That's the maximum that could be used if there were $11 million sold. And so but that's not the intent, but that is a not to exceed number. So the intent of the sale is the 8.6 million, which includes the 2.5, but you have to reference the maximum allowable, and that's where that additional sizing buffer is included.
Okay. I would also, and I know I had emailed you about this, I just don't feel comfortable voting on it, not knowing exactly what we're building, equipping, renovating, adding to, repairing. So I just want to go on the record saying that.
One question I have is, so this bond sale is going to pay for, to make a payment for a previous bond sale. So that kind of feels kind of like you're using borrowed money to pay for borrowed money. When do we actually satisfy the debt? How does that come about?
You satisfy the debt when you satisfy the installment purchase revenue bond, which I'll have to get the schedule for you. I don't have that exact date, but it is at a later date, and we have to do this for a number of more years. This was structured whenever this funding mechanism was established back in the mid-2000s, and actually you can't do this anymore. You can't build schools this way anymore.
So what you're referencing there is the LOSF, or the Lexington One School Facilities, basically that corporation. And so within that corporation, how much property still exists for us to, I guess, for lack of a better term, buy back of that corporation?
Right. So it's these locations. So New Providence, Carolina Springs Elementary and Middle, and then renovations at Red Bank and Gilbert Primary School are part of that IPRB.
So this is the final,
This is not the final time we would do this, but those facilities are part of this, that structure.
okay, okay.
I'll have to get you a date on when the term of the bond sunsets, when we pay it off.
So there's still, those properties or that, I should say that debt still exists within that
Yes.
LOSF corporation.
Yes.
Do we have a number on that? Is it
I'll
10
have to-
million or 100 million?
I'll have to get you that number.
Okay,
Um,
okay. And if we look at, so when we look at the 8% debt, and again, I'm trying to understand the flow of how this is established. If we look at the 8% debt, section 1.03, page 4, basically 574 million is the number used to allocate the 8% debt, or to calculate the 8% debt. So that gives us a number of 45, roughly 46 million. The current outstanding debt is 8.7 million of general obligation debt. So we basically used 8.7 million of our 45 million, correct? If we look at the CAFR from last year, when we ended 2018, we were at 16.8 million. So it looks like from my sort of raw math, we've paid down about 8 million out of that. Where did that come from?
So last year, for this series, we paid down, if you recall, it was about a 7.5 and a 7.5. This time last year, well, I shouldn't say 7.5, it's about 6.5. 7.5 went towards paying that debt down, and that occurred out of this IPRB payment from last year.
And that was before Dr. Guyton
I'm
was on
sorry.
the board.
Yeah.
It might be why he's not done.
Okay, so that did not come out of a debt transfer from operating budget. That came out of a bond sale?
Yes.
Okay, so that came out of a bond sale. Okay.
Any other questions, board?
When was this 2019 Series B, the bond anticipation note? When was that borrowed, taken out?
It was approved in the resolution that was passed last year at this time,
Okay.
and
that's-
so it was taken out to
I
make
knew,
the
I just
spring
didn't
payment.
remember that, so that's why, okay.
Yeah, yes, ma'am, I believe it was before you were on the board.
I have a question, and I'm kind of out of my league in asking this question, but I want to ask it anyway. The kind of roller coaster that the country's financial markets have been the last couple weeks, is that going to affect this sale, us going to the bond market at this time?
Actually, right now, what you'll see is that the bond market is very, very favorable. Very favorable. In fact, we're seeing some of the lowest rates really in a long time. Rates that we thought would never happen again. So it's definitely to our advantage.
Anything else, board? Okay, let's go back. I have Dr. Guyton issued the motion. Mr. Oswald seconded it. Are there any additional questions or comments before we take a vote? Okay, did you want to say something? Okay. Hearing none, we'll take a vote. All in favor, well, let me read it again. Do I hear a motion to adopt a resolution to provide for the issuance and sale of general obligation bonds? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'm opposed.
Okay, so we have 6-1 with Ms. Garris in opposition. The motion, it carries, and with 6-1. Now we'll move to 11.0, which is Superintendent Greg Little's update. 11.1 is we're going to hear from Mr. Salters again, so I'm going to turn it over to you, Dr. Little.
Well, thank you very much, Madam Chair. We had a big day today. I don't know if anybody was paying attention to the calendar, but having the first day of school was very exciting today. And I may have a few pictures if I could. We actually were trending at some point today on Twitter, which was pretty cool. I think because school starts early, maybe before all the country wakes up and starts hashtagging. We beat like Amy Adams's birthday and whatever the Bachelorette thing was. I don't know what that comes out to be. I don't watch that TV show, but I know it always trends on Twitter. But hashtag Lex1 Day 1 was quite popular. And we had really our central services staff across the district today. Melissa Rawl told me today, she said, I just am shocked by the number of people that we've had dropping by the school. And so it was great to have folks get out there. Did we get all 5 of those? I thought I had 4 or 5 pictures. Go ahead and go ahead and scroll through those. There's one at Saxagatha. That may be at Gilbert. And then that is at New Providence, maybe?
No, White Knoll.
White
She
Knoll?
had on a White Knoll shirt.
Okay, White Knoll. And then Carolina Springs.
Carolina Springs, yeah.
Just cute as they can be. I setting 2 different or 3 different kindergarten lunches today. And if you want to see people who have a special place in heaven, watch the first day of kindergarten lunch when you hand them a carton of milk and they have to figure out with their fine motor skills how that carton of milk opens. It's quite fascinating to see that. And we had probably the highlight of the day was this one young man had been in the country for about 2 weeks, spoke no English, and missed his mama. And that was a challenge for everybody in the entire building. In fact, he was sitting over here, and the lunchbox he threw was sitting all the way over here. And it was quite interesting. And then one of the great moments of the day happened where a front office secretary had bonded with him earlier in the day. And she came down and sat with lunch with him, and he smiled, brightened, he quit crying, and he ate lunch, all because of a secretary decided that it was her job to go down and take care of a child instead of just doing what we pay her to do. And it was an exciting moment. It was a beautiful moment to see, and just another great example of the wonderful things that are taking place in Lexington 1. With that being said, so it's a great day today. We've had a lot of people waking up late and getting to school. I think overall we did okay today. I will continue to remind our public that the first couple of weeks we have to shake out the transportation issues. Buses run a little later. More people decide to drive to school. I'll give an example of my own family today. Both of us drove to school today where we were dropping Naomi off, and certainly that doesn't happen all the time. So we do appreciate your patience, and any feedback you have for systems improvement, we will certainly take a look at that. But I know Mr. Kurtz and his team in transportation has been working really hard, and we're going to have a transportation update tonight, which is going to be very exciting. And so with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Salters again for an operations update.
Thank you, Dr. Little. Just briefly tonight, some pictures of the ongoing projects we have. These will be the last pictures you'll see of Beechwood Middle School. We've finally turned the keys over, and we're have students in the building. Very excited today to welcome 890 students to the facility. I think their enrollment right now is at 913. They had 890 faces in the building this morning, and so just as an aside, we projected them right at 900, so we're right in the neighborhood there. The driveways and the parking lots were full this morning at drop off, and just some images of the completed facility, our prototype plan that you'll see some pictures in a minute that may look familiar as well at Pelion. It's really coming along as well, but some really good shots of this building, and they had their dedication ceremony last Thursday, and here's a shot of that ceremony. Really good attendance at that, and they did a good job with their bingo bash as well. They had in the parking lot that evening, so it was very well attended. A number of folks were there taking a tour of the building and getting acclimated to where their classrooms were and so forth. So Senator Roddy Cromer was there as well and presented a resolution from the Senate to Ms. Jenkinson. It's quite an honor to do that. Moving on to Carolina Springs Elementary School. We have some maybe not as glamorous work, but very important work there at the elementary school, sorry. We've got some sidewalk extension that's going on there, and renovation. We had a repair of a drainage issue there that was creating a significant wash in the back of the school, impacting their playground and play space. And so we've done some improvements on that over the summer. Very glad to get that taken care of. And then these folks here are actually doing some canopy extension. This is on the bus loop area, and we've been able to extend this canopy out as a very small canopy before. Really couldn't get more than a handful of students underneath it, so that's going to be extended on around where we can get a larger number of students under shelter, which was appropriate today. That we woke up to some rain and closed the day out with some rain in a couple of places. So they also were able to replace this is the multi-purpose room. We're able to replace this flooring and this divider on the back side of this, you recall, is our cafeteria space. And so this divider was not operational. We were able to get that repaired and then replace that flooring. So they're very excited about that. Moving on to Centerville Elementary School, things are coming right along there. We've got a number of our foundations in, and foundation block is being laid. You can see that they're getting ready to pour the building pads, and the work is going on very nicely there. We're still on schedule to open in August of next year. So this time next year, we'll be dedicating Centerville. New Pillion Middle School, you can see we're in a similar situation there. Foundation block is laid. We actually have poured this pad, so the first classroom wing at Pillion is poured, and we're very excited about the progress going on that campus as well. Recall, it is a 2-story building, so there's a lot more to build here than there is at Centerville. So you may be thinking, well, they'll get done first, but there's a good bit more to build there. So they won't finish in August, but it'll likely be a mid-year opening for the new Pillion Middle School. And of course, as always, we have our website that we work closely with our communications staff to maintain, and you can track our building plan progress on that website for all the projects in the referendum. That I'm happy to answer any questions.
Let's give Mr. Salters and his team a round of applause. I personally think that was the smoothest school opening we've ever had. We've never dedicated a school a week before we opened it and had that bingo bash. I think Greg had more fun than any kid there.
Well, no doubt about it.
And all that good food, and Miss Jenkinson did it. It was just a wonderful event, so thank you. Thanks for all your work this summer. And the parking lot at Lexington High School is just heaven on earth. We all got to see that at the convocation. Is Melissa here? Is she back there? She already left. She has to be happy. She got some new pavement, so thank you for that. Okay, Dr. Little, continuing with you.
So one of the major topics of conversation at this time of year is always transportation. And so what we wanted to do is to have an opportunity for Mr. Caldwell, and I'm sure Mr. Kurtz can chime in, about what are some changes we can anticipate in transportation coming up. There's some exciting new technology that I think the board is going to be interested in. And again, I don't want to step on the presentation, but I know we're also going to talk about those 22 new propane buses.
Yes, sir.
And so I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Caldwell to give us an update of the what's new in transportation.
Thank you, sir, and Madam Chair, members of the board. I do appreciate the opportunity to do this. Again, today was the first day, and I will reiterate what Dr. Little said, and I appreciate him saying that. It does take a week or two to kind of get things shaken out, as you say. When you think that you have a crew that develops routes of about 25,000 miles per day, there's going to be some wrinkles to iron out. But Mr. Kurtz, he and his crew are up to the challenge, and I just want to publicly thank him for all the work that he and his folks do. But very quickly, the transportation update. As you may remember, the Volkswagen emissions settlement, that was several $billion, I believe, wound up having some funds dedicated to South Carolina, and of those funds that came to our state, a portion of that was used to buy 78 new propane school buses. Of those 78, Lexington 1 is receiving 22 of those propane buses. And while at the news conference it was announced they would be in around January, that's a very optimistic timeline. It is more likely going to be in around March, around springtime, before we get those buses. So we should be able to see those kind of being included into the fleet sometime before the end of the school year, definitely by next year. Dr. Little insisted that I find a picture of the bus, and then he sends me this one to put in the presentation. I'm not sure.
For the record, I did not send that to Mr. Caldwell. He's making that up for the presentation.
This was the press conference that was held on July 30th. That bus in the background, while it looks no different than any other bus you may see, that is a propane-powered bus that belongs to that belongs to the state. It's a part of Richland District 1's fleet. But they let us borrow a couple of those for display. And again, those are the type buses that we will be receiving in the spring. The buses that we're getting, they're 77 passenger buses, and I bring that up because we are replacing our 1988 and 1990 models, and those models are 54, 60, and 66 passenger buses. And replacing them with 77 passenger buses means that we increase our seat space by about 374. So what that means is that 22 new buses actually feels like 27. That's in direct contrast to in the past when we've had larger buses replaced by newer, smaller buses. So that's a trend in the right direction. So we will have 22 new buses and again have seating capacity for what would currently be about 27. So we've been able to maximize
That's
that.
one driver with 77 students.
I'm sorry.
That's one driver with 77
Well,
students.
that's the capacity of the buses. They don't always fill those to capacity, but that's what some of those are. And we have 77 passenger buses now.
Yeah,
so,
I mean, I know that.
yeah,
It's just
That's
kind of mind-boggling.
pretty incredible, and to have that many kids behind you. The question comes up often, well, where will these buses be allocated? Well, currently at the Lexington and River Bluff hub, and that's because that's where the fueling station will be located. We have already begun having conversations about the new transportation hub that will bring in White Knoll into the mix. But currently those buses will be at the Lexington River Bluff lot on Bar Road because that's where the state is installing the fueling station.
May I ask a question? I did have a couple of constituents call me and ask me, in comparison to like a regular diesel fuel engine, the safety protocols for propane, because I guess there one mentioned, they said, I have that gas grill on my back deck, and if that tank blows up, how does it work? How are the safety protocols for a propane bus versus, say, a diesel bus or something different?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question. Safety features of propane buses. The tanks are 20 times more puncture resistant than gasoline or diesel engines. We're going to take a field trip on one of the new buses and fill up our propane tanks. When they're tested at 4 times the normal pressure. Federal regulations require, and I apologize for reading this to you, that the tanks on the buses be within the frame rails, and after impact tests, they can show no leaks for 30 minutes. And in fact, I've read some studies that say that the integrity of the bus structure is actually strengthened by the fact that the propane tanks are on there because of the way they have to place those on there. Wow. Tanks are filled to 80% capacity, just like your propane tank at home. That allows for the expansion with the heat and that sort of thing. And at this point, we have no reports of thermal events. Again, that's what the State Department calls bus fires. No reports of thermal events, and they have redundant safety features, safety valves, and that sort of thing. So everything that I've read, I mean, certainly unlike you see on TV. If someone crashes into a car, it doesn't blow up. And if someone crashes into a bus with a propane tank, it doesn't blow up. I read things about auto ignition temperatures and flash points and all those kind of things. I don't really understand that. So I could throw some numbers and tell you that the temperature for propane to ignite is about twice that of gasoline. I don't know what that means. I can't put that in relative terms, but everything that I've read, and I would certainly hope that the state would have done a tremendous amount of research before, purchasing these buses, and they already have 178 something buses, propane buses already in the fleet for the state. So some other positive features, it reduces greenhouse gases by 25%, 80% fewer hydrocarbon emissions than diesel, and just about all, if not all of our buses currently are diesel. They're 50% more quiet than diesel engines. And a leak, unlike a gasoline leak or diesel leak. Should that happen, it will not contaminate the air or the soil or the water, so you don't have a biohazard situation should that occur.
Well, that day, our two bus drivers that went to pick up the buses at Richland 1, they both were just raving about how quiet that bus was and how smooth the ride was. And those buses, I think, have been in use a pretty good little while. So they're not brand-new buses.
Right.
So, but they both just went on and on about that. So I thought that was positive.
Hardly a year has gone by recently where I haven't gotten calls once school started from concerned citizens because of the emissions that the diesel buses are putting off. They would sit behind a bus in an extended traffic light, and they're just getting covered up in the soot and the smoke. So not only are we, increasing our ridership, increasing our fleet, but we're also kind of being nice to the environment too. So that's a plus.
Dr. Guyton, did you have a question?
Just out of curiosity, how do they compare in cost?
Which
Which obviously doesn't affect us, but
That's
just-
right.
Yeah.
Is there much difference in the cost? I don't know the answer.
Propane and diesel are roughly about the same.
Really?
Operational cost is also about the same. Diesel gets better mileage, propane gets less mileage. Propane cost on state contract under $1 a gallon for what's called automotive propane. When we go to get propane in our propane tank for the grill, we're paying probably about $3.50 to $4 a gallon for it. So when you take the mileage decrease versus the cost versus the mileage you get with the diesel, the cost of the diesel, it kind of equals itself out.
So do we see the state kind of moving towards propane purchases in the future, or?
They're leaning toward getting more propane in the future before the environment. However, the infrastructure in the state right now, when it comes to us looking at propane for long-range trips, used to be diesel was very hard to find. They find it everywhere, because that's when we had gasoline buses years ago. But diesel plentiful, but propane right now is not. And also, that's another reason the state's trying to get more school districts, because currently only 7. After this rollout, there'll be 10 school districts with the propane stations to give more flexibility for fueling buses that do go on field trips.
What about from a maintenance perspective? How does that, are we able to maintain the fleet, or do we have to, if one goes down, we have to take it into a state?
The state will maintain after warranty. The maintenance on a propane is a lot easier than a diesel. The diesel right now, currently with the EPA standards, you have all the particulate filters, GN, DEF fluid, et cetera. A diesel right now, depending upon the make and model, some take upwards to 5 gallons of oil for an oil change. The diesel motor for the buses that are coming is basically equivalent to a 454, the old GM 454. Takes roughly 7 to 8 quarts of oil. It's regular automotive oil. The other part about propane, other than the oil in the engine, you don't get all the carbon and soot like you do with gasoline inside your regular automotive car. So some of the maintenance parts will be easier to take care of versus diesel. The cost is going to be less to maintain the propane motor versus the diesel.
Do tanks get cold, like your propane tank at home, after you've had it for a while? If you've had your propane tank at home for a while, you know how to collect and get real cold? Does that same thing happen with the bus?
They can, but the newer technology in the propane used to be with automotive propane, you could have what's called vapor lock when it was cold.
Oh, yeah.
But now that they do direct liquid injection, kind of like a fuel injection for cars, you don't have that anymore. Even when it's real cold.
It is quite apparent the wrong person has this clicker in his hand. So.
Well, Mr. Caldwell, I'm gonna sit here, I'm gonna nod through what everything he
the
just
second-
said, and I have no idea what any of that meant.
Yeah.
That's why we
Isn't-
have him.
A 454, that doesn't mean anything to me.
Well, if you're familiar with the song Rocket Man by Elton John, there's a line that says, all this science I don't understand. It's just my job 5 days a week.
All right.
Currently, we have 184 state buses. Of those, 166 are route buses, the buses you see in the mornings and the afternoons. The average age of those buses is 9 years. 18 spare buses, and the average age of the spares are 10. With these new replacements being put in, and again, they're not additions, they're replacement buses, that will bring our average age to 7 years. So that's a progress. It's not perfection, but it is better. So our fleet is getting younger. As of last week, Friday, when I did this PowerPoint, we were 7 regular route drivers short. Kind of switch gears here. Added to that, unfortunately, we have several drivers who are currently out on medical leave, and most of those are scheduled to return in September and October. So we'll be down a few drivers until that time comes. We are, for the first time, offering weekend bus driver training classes. They've normally been, during the week and that sort of thing. Mr. Kurtz has done a district-wide campaign for advertising for drivers, and we're trying to get some things put up on our website, some videos and that sort of thing to attract the drivers to that. When the economy is pretty good, it's difficult to attract and maintain those drivers. One of the things that we did implement this year that I think was a game changer, as Dr. Little likes to say, is that we began paying for the training. Folks were before had to commit 4 or 6 weeks, whatever the time frame was, to train and not being paid for that. So we were able to kind of pay them from the beginning, and that's helped us, close that gap. But that's what our numbers look like at this point. Last thing I want to talk about is the new technology that Dr. Little hinted about. We are in the process of finishing up the install of technology on our buses that will have live GPS tracking. So we can track the buses as they're going through their routes. It has computerized routing that I think they used this summer and to establish the bus routes. There's also a parent notification aspect of this, and this is the real cool thing. It's called School Bus Hub, and what parents can do, and we will once we get the routes settled and we get we know which kids are riding which buses, because there's always some shuffling around. The parents will have an opportunity to enroll in this School Bus Hub and give us some contact information, and when the bus is 10 minutes away from their stop, they will get some sort of notification, whether it be a phone call or a text or whatever they sign up for. It'll also notify them when the bus has reached the stop. In addition to that, it has the capability of sending out brief messages if there's a breakdown, if there are traffic delays or weather delays or that sort of thing. And we can actually send out messages to the parents, so we don't have the kids who are still standing at the bus stops waiting on the bus. So again, as soon as everything
The
gets...
School Bus Hub, that's automatic, but the second bullet, that's driven by the driver? Or are they both driven by the driver?
The receiving the notifications.
Yeah, that there's 10 minutes away. Does the system automatically generates that for the parent?
I'm glad you're here, Bill, because I don't know the answer to that question. So
School Bus Hub, information we give to the parents to voluntarily enroll. Once they voluntarily enroll with their information.
But I'm saying on our part, what
there's a breakdown.
triggers the bus?
Yeah.
The first bullet, is that an automatic by the software? It knows when it passes a certain place and it says I'm 10 minutes away?
Geofence based on where
Right,
the bus
but the
stop is.
second one, the driver actually triggers that, correct?
The second one will be triggered by the transportation facility.
Okay,
Instead of us having to wait to go to the school, we can do it even sooner.
okay, that's great. I think parents will love both of those features.
But the driver won't have to do that while driving the bus.
Right,
So
that's what I was wondering.
Well, and one of the things that I've had parents complain about is when a bus is late, and these 1988 buses are often late, I imagine, because they're more likely to break down because they're 30 years old.
Right.
But one of the frustrations is, and from a customer service perspective, and this is one of commitment 3 of customer service, is that when that bus is broken down on the side of the road and it's 30 degrees outside, or the bus is broken down on the side of the road more likely and it's raining outside, and your child is sitting there in the rain waiting for a bus to arrive and it may not come for 30 more minutes. Or a parent's trying to figure out where their bus is in the morning, why is the bus late? And we're going to just be able to ramp up our level of customer service when it comes to our parents. And that is one of the things I'm most excited about. It's kind of like Uber, if you think of it like an or Lyft, ride sharing. I should say we're not advertising anybody up here, but it's an opportunity to really communicate directly with our customers and say, hey, listen, you can keep little Johnny inside for 5 more minutes today because your bus is going to be a little late. They don't need to sit out there in the rain or the heat or whatever it may be.
I just want to say, I think that's great. I mean, really, riding a bus hasn't changed a whole lot in a long, long time. And I mentioned when Dr. Little was telling us about this a few weeks ago, I can track Bike Squad delivering my sandwich to me and where it is on the road. I surely should be able to track where my kid is on the school bus. And so I think this is going to be a real welcome thing for our parents.
Well, another great segue, because the other phases of the technology includes driver time and attendance tracking and a student tracking capability. And I will tell you that we probably got a little ahead of ourselves on this particular aspect. So we've sometimes to go fast, you have to slow down. It has the capability of actually tracking the students once they get on the bus and get off the bus, which is an awesome feature. It gets a little complex when we're dealing with first graders who have to have a card to scan in and out, and how do they keep up with those cards. And when my son was in the 6th grade, he forgot to wear his shoes to school one day. So I suspect that keeping up with an ID card for a 6 or 7-year-old would probably be problematic. So what we're going to do is work with the administrators, particularly the administrators of the younger kids, and just decide what's the best way to do this, because that is a fantastic component to have, and we can see that a student, got on the bus at this time and got off at this time. So
Will there be some privacy parameters so that, like, say, a non-custodial parent or, I would not want other people to know where my children are exactly. So will there be privacy concerns?
And again, I hate to keep deferring to Bill, but he's the one that's been, hands-on with this. And I'm sure that's been discussed through the weekly conversations that you have with the vendor.
Parents will have to authorize to get the information that they want. When it comes to student tracking, the student tracking part will only be seen by transportation.
Okay.
But they actually don't have that. But
So
if they call and say, Johnny's not home, we would look, say, Johnny got off stop at Elm Oak at 3:55.
Okay.
just like with the GPS tracking, the bus didn't come by my house today. Well, we don't do this to try to prove our customers wrong, but we can say, well, actually, our GPS shows that it came 10 minutes ago, or it's 10 minutes away, or whatever. So it's a very cool way to kind of push ourselves into to where we need to be with keeping up with our kids. And that actually rounds up our presentation. I'll be glad to answer any other questions you may have.
I have another question. I think we talked about this before, but are all of those buses that catch on fire, are they gone when this is rolled out? How many buses do we have that still have that problem?
Well, state buses, I think all the state buses have been replaced. We own some of those models, right, Bill?
All the 95, 96 buses are all gone. The state has pulled every one of those off the road.
Okay.
All Kentucky buses as well. Kentucky buses are from the thermal events. We as a school district do still have a few of the transit buses. However, they are, I think one's a 2004 model, and the others are 2012, and one's a 2017.
And it was the mid-90s ones that had the,
Configuration of the wiring, et cetera, et cetera.
And what's that number?
3, 1, and 1.
Okay.
the Kentucky buses, if you wonder what that means. Those are those huge buses with the
Bought from
ugly
Kentucky.
black stripe down the side. So those are gone.
Board members, any other questions?
I have a question. You had mentioned tracking driver time in there. This year, they started calculating driver time differently. Can you tell us the reasoning behind that?
I may lean on Mike Stacy for that. I've never really been completely sure about the set times that the drivers dealt with. You probably know more about that than I do. Can you explain, can we talk through why that changed?
I think the big question here is it's always been hard to figure out exactly what the set times were. And it seemed like it was somewhat arbitrary, like how people got some had 8 hours, some had 7.5, some had 7. So we made a real effort to make it consistent across the board. And then if a driver needs more time than what was put in play, we would add that time as we see fit. And Bill can probably adjust it even better.
Right, no drivers losing any time. Basically, if a driver was 6.5 hours on set time, we'd have a variance of drivers. You have 6.5, 6.25, 6.75, so on and so forth. It's very hard to keep track of. So if anybody's in between 6 and 7, they had a base set time of 6 hours. but they still, you know, if they're doing the 6.5, they're getting paid their 6.5. But the 6.5 also was the drivers too that got paid year round. That pay is prorated out of the 6.5, 6 3/4, 7.5, 7 3/4, what have you. They get their base pay, which is now separated through all the paychecks, and what they make over the 6.5, 7.5, the half hour, 3/4, whatever, they get that money in their current paycheck. So through the school year, they're making more money than you lose making or taking home more money than taking home less money. They're still getting the exact same pay they were with their set time. It's just recalculating, making it easier to keep track of. So if somebody was 7.5 hours set time, they're now base 7, they're still getting their 7.5. No one's lost good time.
Right. My understanding is this affects the how annual leave is accrued. Because like you said, if they're 7.5, now they're 7, and the additional 30 minutes is add time. So their annual leave is based on their set time. So they would be earning leave based on 7 hours instead of 7.5.
The leaves earned by the day contract, correct?
That's correct.
So if they're a 180-day contract, they get set number of days per year, just like the 230s get set number of days per year.
So leave is not accrued per number of hours worked, because some are 6, some are 7, some are 8.
I'm gonna have to check on that.
Yeah, I
'cause
believe it is.
I think you might be right there, is that it is by the number of hours for their day. I mean, like, it is by the number of days in their contract, but I think it's also offset by the number of hours they work per day. But I can definitely follow that up.
Because and I understand how they're being paid, but the way they're now being paid, they're losing leave time.
Well, I can follow that
Okay,
up with
that's
you.
fine. Thank you.
Board, any other questions? Okay, we'll now go to, let's stop and thank Jeff and Bill. I mean, wow, that was a wonderful presentation. We have begged for new buses for years, and I mean, this is just manna from heaven, so thank y'all. 12.0 is new business. 12.1 is a report. It's on the sole source and emergency annual report, and I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Salters. And board, this is for information only. Mr. Salters?
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. In your packet, you had the sole source and emergency procurement report. There's two reports. There's the July 1 through December 31st of 2018, and then January 1 through June 30, 2019. This is a report per our procurement code that we issue each year, and it's a summary of the sole source contracts and the emergency contracts for each of those periods. In the first semi-annual report, July to December, there were 11 sole source contracts and 4 emergency contracts. And then in the January to June, there were 8 sole source and 1 emergency. And in general terms, the sole source contracts are typically related to software or specific installed things that are in place that have been competed in the past, and we are doing something else with that product. And then generally, the emergency contracts are more often than not HVAC or mechanical or plumbing, some kind of issue that occurs, with one of our school facilities, and we need to have it repaired or looked at in a very timely manner. So those are the reports for that. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have related to those.
About jumper card or cease, why were they a sole source procurement?
They are a sole source procurement because of the prototype plan that we're using and the way the AIA architecture contracts are written. The architect actually owns the rights to the plan that they design. And so if we want to build that plan, we use that architect. And we've talked, a lot about the prototypes and the benefits of that. We are building 2 schools and gotten them out of the ground, and you've seen the progress tonight. Our neighbors across the road, or the lake, if you will, who had a similar bond referendum, don't have anything out of the ground yet. And every day in construction is $1 saved. So it really levies that and leverages that ability to get that stuff started quickly.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Any other questions, board?
Is the driver behind that liability?
Yes.
Okay, so if, for example, if we said, no, we want to own our own plans, it would be hard to find an architect who would assume the liability and then potentially moving on to another architect? Is that,
Right.
is that the driver?
Another architect is not going to take that plan and not redraw it because they won't assume that liability.
Okay,
It's very much related to liability.
okay.
And that's a common, the architect and construction documents, if you're familiar with the AIA, that's a American Institute of Architects, that's a very common contract language that's used across the industry for that purpose.
Any other questions, board? Okay, hearing none, we'll move to 12.2, which again is a report. It's the Minority Business Enterprise Annual Report. And I'm going to turn it back over to Mr. Salters, and board, this is for information only. Mr. Salters?
Thank you, Madam Chair. In your package, you have the Minority Business Utilization Report. You'll recall a couple of months ago, I believe it was back in maybe June or May, I don't recall exactly, but I do remember Mr. Butler was still here, that you approved the Minority Business Plan for this upcoming year with the percent goal set at 0.5%. You'll notice for fiscal year 2018-19, the dollar goal for the minority business is $291,236.90. That's calculated based on our total budget, but also the amount of that budget that is controlled, meaning the amount that could be competed or contributed into this minority business goal. You see the breakdown below for the total for the fiscal year. So the total was $424,347.64. So I'm pleased to inform the board that we did meet the goal this year.
Great. Okay. Board, any questions or comments for Mr. Salters? Okay, hearing none, we'll move to item 13.0. Board, in your packet, there were items for board information only. One was the general fund financial report for July 2019. The other was the general fund budget transfers for July 2019. I just would like to make the public aware that the board is traveling this weekend to a legal conference with the other school boards from across the state. The conference itself is really exciting because we'll be talking about the laws that impact our students and our staff and our school districts. We'll be talking about education savings accounts, the Freedom of Information Act, how to use and abuse social media as a school board trustee. We'll be looking at bullying. There's going to be a lot of talk about consolidation of districts. We'll also be discussing the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. We'll be talking again about transportation. That never goes away. And probably one of the biggest topics we'll be talking about, as always, is student privacy and the rights of our students. So it should be a great conference. We're going to be very busy. So we'll have some good reports to come back next month and share with everyone. We're real excited about those topics. It's always a good conference because they pass laws almost daily, and we have to implement the laws. So we need to know what the laws are. Board, we're now to 14.0, which is adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn? So moved. Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Do I have a second? Second. Thank you, Ms. Green. All in favor, please stand up, and thank you for coming tonight.